Okay, so yesterday we painted the shell and the day before that shell. So I think today we will be painting this little shell here, which is a mussel shell. And I'm going to paint it slightly bigger than what it is on the real life. The little mussel shell is quite small. I'm not going to go too big. Try and keep it very realistic. Just a little section there, a little bit of detail there, and let's make it slightly rounded. I need my eraser and I'll just draw in that little white section there. And that's it. So I'm going to go with a quite dark color, and I have my clean water here. Let's see. So let's just move it slightly more in view. I hope this is not distracting you. I can put a tissue paper there. So this is some serviette. I'm going to. I'm not going to clean my palettes because I use all of the colors again. I'm not going to waste any of my pigment because these are tiny little studies. And I'm going to go with the ivory black. I'm just going to drop it in here, but I want to mix in a drop of ultramarine blue. Give it like a blue gray. So you can use a little bit of Payne's gray here, but I don't have that in on my palette here. So I'm just going to use what I have, and I do have this is ivory black, and it's a little bit more warmer than Payne's gray. I will bring down some Payne's gray one day. And again, the line drawing is very light but dark enough for me to see. So just wet it. So you want quite a nice sheen on your paper. So that's the sheen that we want on our paper. Okay, and I want to use a brush with a nice little tip, and I'm going to just pick some of the pigment up, and I want to drop it in on the section here. So it's very watery and very light. So I want to try and get that very light color in the middle. So I'm going to keep it as light as possible for that section there. And I'm going to take a I'm going to drink a little bit of my tea, and then when I'm back, this should be nice and dry. So, okay, so it is a little bit drier than what it was before. So while that is drying, I'm going to pick up a little bit of a brown mix. So just a little bit of burnt sienna or yellow ochre will be perfect for painting out. So I just want to go just on the outside there to paint in that little side of the shell there. Just carefully. I don't want to obviously go in too dark, so it's very soft, and then I'll just soften it a little bit with my brush. And then going to use a bit of this darker black mix that I have, and that is still obviously wet, but I want to go with a much darker color in on the side here. And obviously my angle, I can see those little sections there where it was attached to another shell, so I'm trying to map that in or paint it in. And then take it on the edges there, and I don't want to obviously mess up the yellow ochre that I just painted there, so I'm just going to be carefully painting it in. And wow, Amanda, I want to use a brush with a nice tip for this, and I find that this one's got a nice little tip. Also have a round brush just for all the washes and also to wet my painting, so I have something of both there. So just trying to get close enough to the exact details that I can see, and then in there too, very carefully just painting in those little darker sections of the mussel shell. And we have so many mussel shells here by us. The seagulls have a party, I tell you. Every day they have so many shells, it's unbelievable. And then I want to leave a highlighted section around that section there, and go. So just try and do it as slowly as possible around these edges. If you want to paint this, and I'm going to leave that little highlighted section in there, and I'm going to mix a bit more of the blue with this black mix and try and create all of those little markings there. And then wipe my brush on tissue paper and soften it. I want a very light color in there, so I don't want it to be too dark. And I'm going to pick up a bit more of the dark mix with the ultramarine. I'm going to just darken that section there. Leave a little highlighted section there. Take it around and around this section here. Again, leave that brown part there that it was attached to the other shells, and just pushing my brush to create a hard line here, like a darker section, and a little bit darker around here. And just want to leave a few of those little lighter sections of the mussel shell in there. And wipe my brush on the tissue paper and then just move some of that paint down to the bottom there. And I'm going to rinse my brush. I want a bit more of the darker mix. I'm going to pick up some of that ivory black again, a bit more of the ultramarine, and now I'm going to go even darker on this section here. So my brush is a little bit dry, and stick it up in there. Again, I want to be very careful around this section and just paint in those little lines, but I can see a little like highlighted little sections there that I want to try and map in, that also show the shape of the mussel shell. And take it slowly around that corner there, and then a little bit of detail in there, a little bit more detail in there, and we're going shell crazy this month. And then I want to just soften some of those little lines with my brush. This brush holds a lot of water, so I want to be careful. Still want to leave a little bit of those highlights there that are lighter on the shell, but you feel a little circular little detail, circular little round white spots in the shell. So I want to leave it as light as possible, and then just careful around that tip there. Don't want to lift out any of the pigment that I've already painted in. So, and I'm just moving it around. And maybe I could make this a little bit smaller, but I don't want to fuss with it too much. I'm quite happy with that little mussel shell for now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my bigger brush. I'm just going to be careful. I want to paint this shadow, but if I go too close and that's wet, I will just ruin this. I will make all of this paint flow into this highlighted section, which I don't want. I want it to dry completely, so just make sure your shell is dry. It is hot here, so it dries quite quickly, the paper. And I use my Stillman and Burn watercolor paper here, so I see a little bit of a detail there. And I pick up the same color, which is the blue-gray mix, and I'm going to go close enough to that section there, and you'll see that it is quite dark now, but I will show you what I do now. And take it to there. So again, it's a different time of the day, so my shadow is a little bit smaller, but there is another little shadow that I can see, but I'm not going to worry too much about all of them. I do want to make sure that I have some of the serviettes with me, so I can just soften it a bit. And then I'm going to lightly rinse my brush all the time and just soften this little marking or the little shadow that I painted in. I don't want it to be too dark, and I also don't want it to be too big. And just pick up the paint with your brush, and then I'm going to just use some tissue paper and dry this so it doesn't flow even more onto that section. I'm going to leave it to dry for a second, and then pick up some more of this paint. And now, because the paper is a little bit drier, I can go in and drop in a little bit more paint. More of a blue-gray mix that I want there. And oops, it's a little bit too much, but again I will pick it up now with my brush. And there you go, my big round brush. Dry it on tissue paper and just soften it quickly. Don't leave it to stain your paper too much. And with a Stillman and Burn watercolor paper, I noticed that you can't really scrub too much on the paper, and you also can't wet it too much, then it starts lifting some of the hair fibers or the paper fibers. So just be careful. And obviously my shadows are all basically the same because of the patio where I paint. And you want a soft little shadow because you can always go back at a later stage and paint in a bit more color, or you can always go back later and make it a little bit darker. All depends on how dry your paper is, but I am going to leave that to dry for now. Just want to soften a little marking, so that's why I sit here. Oops, yeah, I lifted out a bit more of the paint. Not to worry, just take your tissue paper and soften it. And if you want a little bit more paint right next to the shell, or a little bit of a darker shadow, then just drop in your color there. And I'm going to stop now because I can see that the paper is not going to last any longer, because it's just the type of paper that it is. It's not as strong as, for instance, Arch hot press watercolor paper. But that is my tiny little mussel shell that I painted, and these are the other shells that I painted, and I have them all here. So this was the one that we painted. This one is on Instagram, and the way I filmed it was for Instagram, so I can't put it on YouTube because it is, sorry for that, because it is the way I filmed it, it will be halfway on the screen. And then that little shell that I painted looks a little bit different today than yesterday, but this is the mussel shell and a few of the shells, and I still have a few that I'm also going to paint. And then I'm also painting a beautiful one on Patreon for my patrons, which I will show you at the end of the video. And if you want to join us in painting that one, you're welcome to. It's a little bit more there's a little bit more detail, and it's a little bit more step by step. I also provide you with a line drawing and a little booklet, and a few reference photos and watercolor reference photos to use. And it's just a fun project that we are going to paint in December. The other thing is we also have other tutorials. Our tutorials are a little bit longer on Patreon than on YouTube, so if you want to follow along, you're welcome to join us there. Thank you for watching, and I do hope that you guys will subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Press the bell so that you can be notified every time we upload a new video.